Hey guys, what's going on? Quick disclaimer and major apology ode to Miss A.C. Bradley, the head writer of What If. I live in one of those worlds sometimes where I'm moving so fast, I don't dive in probably as much as I should into who people are, and I grew up watching Saved by the Bell, so AC was always a male name for me, and there's no image on IMDb when you see AC Bradley's name there. So I have referred to her as a him and he many times, specifically in this review, and more than likely, I would imagine, if I go back at my other ones as well. And I wanted to point out that is incorrect. A.C. Bradley is a woman, and I certainly apologize to Miss A.C. Bradley for mixing that up. That is an honest mistake on my end, and one that I will correct going forward. So now with that out of the way, please enjoy this week's episode of the Seaman's spoiler thoughts on What If Episode 4. What if Killmonger saved Tony Stark? Take it away, Passy Man! Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. I now get to say that Uato is on my shirt and on the TV, so you know it's time to get into all the juicy details of this week's Marvel animated television experience. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair? Take a seat. We're getting ready to dive in spoiler filled in the Marvel Studios. What If? Episode 6, What If Killmonger Saved Tony Stark? And as I said, this is a spoiler review, so if you don't want anything spoiled, because I'm going to start spoiling stuff right at the top today. If you don't want anything spoiled, I do have a non-spoiler review. You can check that out right up there. But now, I just want to dive into, my overall spoiler thoughts are going to be pretty spoilery, because I think the most impressive thing, and yes, once again, watching a Marvel show a second time plays even better the second time around, and specifically because you know what's going on in the story, you can really see all the wonderful things that A.C. Bradley pulls off in this episode. And I think one of the most impressive things that he pulls off is the story concept, right? And the fact that he continues to stick to his guns, that these characters are who these characters are. It's just, if you change something, how would the dominoes then fall? And having Killmonger save Tony Stark eliminates the need for Iron Man to ever happen. And instead of Tony, wanting to get rid of all the weapons, he wants to bolster that up. And because Killmonger saves his life, he kind of opens the door for Killmonger to come in and be close to him right away. And that allows Killmonger to not become a hero. And that was the thing that kind of caught me off guard, and I wasn't necessarily 100% ready for. Figured if Killmonger saves Tony, maybe he becomes Iron Man in some way. I sort of figured he would become sort of like a lieutenant for Tony in some way. And, even to the point of, being the head of security, which pisses Happy off. But, because he lets him in and Killmonger isn't trying to be good, it allows Killmonger to get all the power that he's looking for to accomplish exactly what it is that he wanted to accomplish in Black Panther, which is to take over Wakanda and bring the knowledge that Wakanda has to the rest of the world of people that are oppressed. And I love that Bradley ends up sticking to his guns here, and it creates this really interesting look at Killmonger where he becomes a hero in Wakanda, but we know that he's really doing bad things. And the idea of Tony playing right into that because he never becomes Iron Man, he, isn't a hero. And by losing one hero, you have the opportunity to create possibly another one, but Killmonger is who Killmonger is, and that experience in this universe that he lived through was the same as what we got in Black Panther. So here, he ends up accomplishing his goal. And the other cool thing that Bradley does to get us to that point is to take, and this is one of the things that was bothering me, was the size of Shuri. I thought she looked and felt like a kid more than, the woman that we saw in Black Panther. And it occurred to me on the second watch, this entire story is taking place in the time frame of the first Iron Man. So Shuri would have been a kid still. A genius kid, but a kid. And that made the size and some of those changes make more sense. But the other thing that Bradley does is, because all of this happens in Iron Man 1, the thing that I thought was really cool was that he gets us to Iron Man 2, Age of Ultron, and Black Panther by cutting out a lot of the middlemen of those stories, because Killmonger is kind of like the cheat code to get us to all those places. He stops the Obadiah threat. And figures out that he, was going to assassinate Tony. So that never happens. That allows him then to jump right to Iron Man 2, where Tony is like, you got any ideas, man? And he's like, I want to build these freaking robot soldiers to replace soldiers, which is exactly what Hammer is trying to do in Iron Man 2. And Killmonger's the cheat code to get you right to that thing. And we get to see some pretty cool robots that were similar to I think, some of the look of the Hammer tech, but had a bit of, and Tony even makes fun of this, but a bit of a Gundam robot style to them, which I thought was kind of cool. But you're able to jump right to that point and pull something from Iron Man 2 and incorporate it here because Killmonger. And you're able to jump to Klaw, peddling vibranium, only this time he's selling it directly to the Americans, and there is no Wanda or Pietro or Avengers or Ultron going on. It's just the vibranium move, and who's behind all of it? Killmonger, and you have Rhodes accepting it, so you're able to play a beat right out of Age of Ultron, and these are all things that lead directly to Black Panther. And then, because of what we ultimately find out is Killmonger's ultimate plan, you get all of the beats that he carries with him as a character from Black Panther in this episode. And it's one of the shortest episodes, I think, of the season. It's like 30 minutes flat, and it's wild that Bradley, again, pulls off all of the things that he pulls off. Like, the most impressive part of this show every single week is A.C. Bradley's writing. And him and his team have just crafted stories that, like I said, you change one thing and the butterfly effect, when it gets to be big and have a lot of impact, something like this episode, these are the ones that I was looking forward to the most. And while they hit a little bit more than like the first episode with Captain Carter, I love Captain Carter. I can't wait for her to come back. But that, and even the Steve Rogers who's in the Iron Man, Hydra Stomper suit. Like, I love those characters. I can't wait for those characters to come back. But that episode was so close in beat for beat to what Captain America's story was. It didn't quite hit as big as some of these, and especially on this second watch, like going back through this episode and seeing all those little things that Bradley did from a writing standpoint, man, just knocked my socks off. And even though this wasn't an episode that really elicited a lot of reactions from me, it's so good because the writing is so strong and it's so smart. And the other thing that I wanted to call out before diving into the episode that I couldn't talk about in the non-spoiler is the cast. And because we end up going to Wakanda and playing some of those Black Panther beats, you're able to get characters that come back, like Queen Ramonda, voiced by Angela Bassett, which is awesome. King T'Chaka, voiced by John Connie. And we did mention in the non-spoiler that Shuri does pop up in here. And she was not voiced by Letitia Wright, but rather Azioma Akaga. But all of the Wakanda folks, you get Denai Guerrilla back as Okoye, which was awesome. Andy Serkis, because Klaw pops up, comes in, which is really dope. Cheadle's in as Rhodey. And because Jarvis plays a big role this week, Paul Bettany's voice gets to come back as Jarvis, which was really cool. And once again, Leslie Bibbs slipping in there as Christine Everhart during one of the press conferences for Tony. But the stuff that I really dug this week, especially from the voice performances, had to be that Wakanda stuff, because, man, the action in the back half of this episode is so good. But one of the major players in that action is Queen Ramonda. Because this is taking place back when, like, Iron Man was, she's a general of the Dora Milaje, which is so cool. And like, she comes out like with a battle cry for T'Challa, which certainly hit close to home, because that's something like you could see in Black Panther coming, and got that E-Bombay going, and like, it was just so cool to see her get to be badass and to have Bassett give that voice again was awesome. And I love that you get John Connie back here too, man. The conversations that he has with Killmonger, they hit because of what Connie can bring with the performance. So I loved having all those folks back this week, and even some of the smaller ones. Like I said, getting Paul Bettany back as Jarvis was really cool. So I just loved all of that stuff. And like I said, especially on the second watch, this one really hit more. Now, I do have a couple reactions, because there are some pretty big moments that we'll talk about when we go top to bottom. And some of those certainly caught me off guard. So let's throw it back to the old past. What if episode 6 watching Seaman to see his reactions? Take it away, Seaman! Yeah, Killmonger.
Killmonger, I'm calm. Did you see this?
Oh, Black Panther! Yeah, son. Yeah. Oh, man.
I wish it didn't have to go down like this. Stark R&D is no joke. The sonic taser thing is legit. Nah, you could burn it down.
Killmonger's still bad. Oh, there's that Gungam bot.
Right, vibranium worked like a charm.
Yo.
Each one is for a kill. Believe it or not, Tony, I was really hoping you wouldn't make the cut. That you can't see the difference between you and me.
Oh. That was a cool shot. Yo, I like that. Yo, dude, they're leaving me in like the craziest cliffhangers. Yeah, man, just not a ton of reactive stuff in this one. This was more of a, like, especially when I was watching that stuff back, like, I was just in, like, just, you could see me getting sucked into the story. And while there were eye-popping and wonderful visuals and effects, I mean, some of the, like I said, lighting every week is a big thing with this animation. The lighting when Rhodey goes to walk into where all the vibranium is, the glow and like, you get really neat visuals in this episode, and it was more like kind of in awe just watching the story unfold and specifically seeing how it played out into being exactly the path that Killmonger wanted or needed to get to what he wanted to get to. So I am really, really pumped to dive into this thing top to bottom, and we start with Killmonger saving Tony Stark, and we open up much like we saw in the trailer, in the exact moment of the Iron Man opening. He's in the Humvee gets bombed, all chaos breaks out, and when the Stark tech bomb lands right next to Tony and it looks like it's about to all be over, Killmonger's hand comes in, throws the bomb away, and then he immediately just starts taking people out as he works his way to Tony and tells him that the 10 rings have inbound people coming, so we need to get out of here. And I love, this is one of the things I didn't talk about on the non-spoiler that I should have talked about in the non-spoiler. The score this week is superb. And anytime the action or things are starting to kick in, there is a score that is specific to this episode. But intermixed with the score are these sounds and beats from the Wakanda sound vibe that Ludwig Göransson gave us for Black Panther. However, in this moment, when Killmonger shows up, you get that Killmonger beat that we got in Black Panther. And as soon as it kicks in, you're like, yes, I am so ready to go. Even though we end up not going where you think you're going to end up going in this episode. But I love the score of this entire episode and the way they mix in the Black Panther sounds. Specifically, a lot of the drums. So good, man. Every single time they do it. That blending of the original score for this episode and the Wakandan, musical vibes was just really cool, and we'll kind of point those out as we go through. But from here, as we back out, we see Uato up in the sky, and once again, he looks like he is fully tangible, man. Like, he's got pigment in his skin, his clothes have color. He is not just negative space, and in the background. Much like there, much like the shirt, much like we've seen pretty much everywhere in this show up until the Strange Supreme episode. And since then, like I was saying in my non-spoiler, it seems like he's coming more to the forefront. Like, we physically see him move his mouth and talk directly to us in the episode. The fact that his form seems like it's almost physical, it seems like he is getting closer and closer to these stories rather than further and further away as a watcher. And I'm wondering if that visual change in appearance and how he pops up, I mean, the fact that he isn't just negative space and shadowing and stuff that create the form the way we see here. Like, you see his pigmentation and stuff like that. And it makes it seem like he's more physical. And I'm interested to see if that plays into wherever the show goes and maybe plays into the multiverse. It'd be kind of crazy if maybe Uato getting involved happens at the same time that Sylvie kills Kang, and that Strange is helping out Peter, and all of a sudden, Wanda, going crazy. Like, if all of a sudden all of those things line up and that creates the multiverse, like, that would be a crazy twist, and it's something I would love to personally see, because I would love to see Jeffrey Wright actually in live action as Uato. That would be freaking cool. But then Uato introduces us to the episode, right? And he shows us Tony's history, and we get to see, like we did in the trailer, him snapping everything, and seeing the ultimate heroic moment for Tony Stark inside of the MCU before we go to a world where that hero, Iron Man, that version of Tony, never exists because Killmonger saves him. And it's a really fascinating take to see Tony continue to be what Tony was when we first met him in Iron Man, and how that ends up biting him in the ass. And it's one of those, like, it's kind of heartbreaking when you think about, like, how much Tony needs Iron Man, and having that taken away from him makes him very vulnerable throughout this whole episode. And from there, we come to Tony coming home, and this time, because he hasn't been, in a cave for months, he doesn't need a cheeseburger. He can go right into his press conference, and as he's standing up there, we get to see the first domino that shows that this Tony is gonna not be the guy that we've been with all this way in the MCU. As he talks about, someone asked, like, what was it like seeing your own weapon almost kill you? And he's like, I saw my own weapons killing our own boys, and that just means we need to go bigger and fight harder. And the first thing to getting us to doing all of that stuff is me elevating Eric Killmonger to my chief security officer. And I love, immediately they shoot to Abby and Pepper. And Abby's just like, son of a B, man, that was supposed to be my job. Like, that, man, like, that was supposed to be mine. Right away, like, you can already see the dominoes that are falling, that are moving Tony away from the things that make him a hero. And again, that's something that leaves him vulnerable as you go through this. And then right away, as Tony brings him in, he's got his white Navy uniform on. Again, you start to hear that Killmonger beat kicking in underneath the score, which is super dope. And as things are going on, like, Obadiah is there, and, someone starts to, like, create, like, a conspiracy theory in the way that they're asking questions, where Tony's like, if you are insinuating that Eric had inside information on stuff, he's like, you would be insinuating correctly. And Killmonger steps forward to the mic and tells the world that Obadiah Stane was the guy who put the hit on Tony and had hired the 10 Rings to kill him, and had all these things, and literally unravels Obadiah's entire plan in like 2 seconds. And you're like, man, all of Iron Man could have been so short if Killmonger would have showed up. But of course, things maybe for the world would be worse off if Killmonger would have showed up. But nevertheless, like, you wrap up that whole Iron Man story right away, and when you're out at the bar right after, Tony is like, I need you by my side all the time, which is why I'm going to make you my COO. And Pepper's like, you're giving him Obadiah's job, which of course was Pepper's after Obadiah in the Iron Man movies. And he's like, yeah, I want him by my side. Even, like, Killmonger's like, I think I'm more of, like, a soldier. And he's like, that's what makes it perfect, man. We'll be like Butch and Sundance. And Pepper right away is like, they die at the end of that. And it's kind of like a foreshadowing of, like, not good things to come for Tony by making that decision. But nevertheless, you immediately see, and this is why the second watch, you're like, wow, look how quickly Killmonger is acquiring power, which plays into his story, specifically at the end with the conversation he has with T'Challa. But naturally, right away, Pepper is still, like, Tony's, main squeeze, what I mean? Like, she runs that operation and runs Tony at this point in the story in a way where it's like, if this is happening, I need to be looking into Killmonger. So she, has a drink with Rhodes and is like, what's the deal? What should I need to know? He's like, really good soldier. I mean, all things considering, coming out of Oakland, like, this kid is a gem, man. Like, there's nothing wrong with this kid. And she's like, that's the problem. She's like, I usually can sniff this stuff out, and I can't get any kind of scent off him. And nobody doesn't ever want something from Tony. Everybody wants something from Tony, like, all the time. So she is questionable and suspicious of Killmonger, but he is literally giving no reason for that suspicion to be a thing. And from there, it was almost like we got like a dip to black, like you were going to commercial, and then boom, the lights come up and you're in Tony's garage, and he's showing Killmonger the shop, and you see at one point like Killmonger picks up a weapon and the like arm thing takes it from him. You get a little bit of that, like again, recreating and giving us beats that remind us of things that come from these different movies. And again, seeing how Bradley weaves all the different Iron Man and, Tony type stories into this one and Killmonger's. Really impressive to watch. But as they're walking around, they start talking first about their dads, and Killmonger's like, my dad died. Tony's dad, was killed. They start bonding over that. And Tony's like, so, where, like, do you ever have any ideas or anything? It's like, funny you mentioned, I had this thesis where I wanted to create, like, AI droid soldiers to replace humans so that we don't have to lose lives. And right away you're like, oh man, we're weaving in the Hammer storyline from Iron Man 2. And it does play into, Killmonger's general philosophy and thinking. And to create non-human soldiers that could be his soldiers in the world, talk about, protecting the oppressed, they wouldn't have to fight for themselves. So the way those things line up, man, like, it's just, again, continually, over and over. I can't praise A.C. Bradley enough, man. The dude is so smart. But right away, as they're going through it, Tony's like, that's it. I'll do it, man. I'm going to build you your robots. I'm going to make your college dream come true. And they start working. You get one of those, like, Tony montages. You get to a point where it's like things look like it's working, like Eric moves and the robots are programmed to move like him, and as it comes to like fight, Killmonger like shuts down, falls down, and Tony's like, well, at least it didn't explode, his head shoots off. He's like, that's not good. So I love seeing like the play of like trying to figure it out, and you get to this spot where like Tony and Killmonger are just like, I don't know what to do, and Tony for a second contemplates, what if I made a miniature arc reactor? Like, that could power these things. Nah, that would probably be too dangerous, too complicated. And Killmonger is like, vibranium. And Tony's like, well, too bad my dad used the last of that for Cap's shield. Like, we ain't got no vibranium. And Killmonger takes out the necklace. He's like, I got some. Tony ends up breaking that down and realizes that it's exactly what they need to create, the soldiers. So he meets up with Happy and Pepper and Killmonger, and they're in his office, and he's like, how do we go about doing this? And Killmonger's like, I know this guy. And he brings up Klaw, which Pepper is immediately like, we are not getting into business with, like a dark black market, like, arms dealer. Like, that's not smart. And Killmonger's like, you can keep yourself separated, man. We'll bring in Rhodes. Like, Rhodes is your boy. He can represent the U.S. who needs to acquire this vibranium, and we'll send them out. And Tony's like, perfect, look at that, man. I's are dotted, T's are crossed. Make it happen, Pepper. Like, just go off and make it happen so that we can get all of these robots. And that immediately takes us to that, Age of Ultron scenario where Klaw's got all this vibranium, and, Rhodes goes in there this time instead of the Avengers, and instead of it being a black market deal, Rhodes comes in and is just like, all right, show me the goods, this is cool. I think Klaw, like, brings out, like, a Dora Milaje spear first, and is like, got this for $10 million, and Rhodes is like, $10 million, Tony, like, will spend $10 million on just nonsense, right? Like, that's nothing for him. I mean, $10 million doesn't mean anything. Show me the goods, man. And that's where you get this wonderful shot of, like, it opening up, the vibranium being there, glowing on Rhodes, and just visually, like, wow. And then slowly you start to hear those Wakandan drum beats, and you get a very similar setup that kind of reminds you of Black Panther's debut in Black Panther, where he's in the forest and it's very horror movie vibes, right? I mean, like, one person just drops from the ceiling, another person goes missing, you're not seeing anything, and then boom, full on display for the third time. We only got, I think, one more left with Chad. But Black Panther, and what's cool is, of all the characters, Black Panther has been in the most episodes to this point, and used in the most variations, right? You have Star-Lord T'Challa, we've got one-legged Black Panther, and now we have regular Black Panther, like from, I guess you would say probably like from our MCU timeline, sort of, outside of this tweak, but like not one that's become Star-Lord or gone through a zombie apocalypse. So I love that he shows up, he's kicking all sorts of ass, and Rhodey gets to him and just starts shooting, much like in the Black Panther scene where, like, that guy is just shooting with the Klaw, just takes the gun and is like, I'm not here to fight you, man. Like, we're on the same side. And Rhodey's like, you show a funny way of doing it. He's like, I just want to take the vibranium back to where it belongs. Like, this was stolen from us. It's our property. I'm going to just take it home. You let that happen and we'll be good. And the next thing you know, they get hit with a sonic blast. And that little ear thing that Obadiah used on Tony, or I guess that little, like, button, and he had the ear plugs in so it didn't bother him, has now been weaponized into, like, a personal, like, handheld cannon. And you start seeing, like, the things crawling up the neck on both of them. And you know, I think T'Challa, like, tries to reason with, you know, Killmonger, and he's just not having it. And boom, just kills him, like, on the spot with it. And you're like, oh, man, that one, like, hits close to home. Like, to see it, I mean, you don't see, you just see the hand fall. But nevertheless, like, Killmonger, this is the moment where Killmonger, like, reveals that he is as bad as he is in that Black Panther movie, and, like, you start to realize, like, his motives are the same as that version of Killmonger's motives, only now all the things that were in his way in Black Panther are starting to be trimmed out. And then he, you know, moves over to Rhodes, and Rhodes again tries to reason with him like T'Challa, and you start to have this conversation that kind of covers what Killmonger's ultimate goals were from Black Panther. And this is, like, when you're really starting to realize, like, oh my gosh, this is that guy doing that plan just way earlier, and now there are less things in his way, and he's got way more power. And he just kind of lays that in there, man. He's like, I'm trying to bring, you know, justice for my people. Like, I'll do whatever it takes, you know, for that. And Rhodes is just like, that's delusional, kills Rhodey, like, on the spot, and you're like, damn, man, like, no good at all. And Klaw is just like, this is hysterical, this is great, we'll send all this over, and we'll you know, get to business. And Killmonger comes home figuring who's gonna catch him, man. Like, everybody that could have been a witness is now dead. Sets it up where it looks like, you know, the like, Wakanda tried to infringe on what was going on with America, so, like, is now positing America versus Wakanda. And he comes in thinking it's all good, and Tony is a genius and basically calls him on his BS. He's like, yeah, funny, like, you said, made the paper trail lead right to me, and you set all these things up, but you didn't think of everything, because Jarvis is everywhere. And Jarvis records the whole thing. You see Jarvis reconstructs it, and you can see he kills Black Panther and Rhodes. He's like, I know what you did. And, you know, he's immediately like, so what you gonna do, Tony? Like, arrest me? And he's like, no, man, like, that's the law. I'm not here for the law. I'm here for justice. And I love that Killmonger's like, you've never lifted a finger for anything in your life, man. Like, you're gonna fight me? Okay. And boom, all these windows start closing, and, like, almost like blast-proof seals the whole room off. And Tony's like, well, it doesn't have to be me. And out comes Killmonger's freaking Gungam bot, man. And they start to fight, and Killmonger is getting beat early, and Tony's like, what'd you think, man? Like, all the moves, it's all your moves. It does exactly what you do. It knows what to anticipate. And that's the moment where Killmonger's like, guess I gotta improvise. Throws a chair at it, kind of knocks it off balance. He's able to snag a Dora Milaje spear, and you get this dope quick action fight sequence where then he finishes off by splitting the robot in two, and then throws the spear right through Tony's freaking shoulder, man, and pins him to the wall. And you're like, oh my gosh, is he gonna kill Tony too? And he, like, walks up to him, and in the fight, the robot, like, just disintegrates all of Killmonger's shirt, and he's, you know, he's shirtless with all of the scars, and he comes up to Tony. He's like, every single one of these is a kill. And he's like, honestly, Tony, I was hoping that you wouldn't have to make that list, but guess not. And Tony tries to reason with him, you know. He's like, come on, man, like, you and me, we're the same, like, trying to prove, you know, our dad's right who aren't here anymore, and, you know, like, there's better ways to do this. And he's like, Tony, the difference between you and me is the fact that you don't see that there is a difference between you and me. And he, boom, slows it in, kills Tony. You see him mark his chest, and as the camera pans up, it goes, like, pitch black, and then Uato once again is sitting there. But again, a little bit more of the negative space version of it, but still kind of physical or whatnot, just kind of looking over this story in a very interested looking way. And then you get this really cool moment where, like, his eye, which are already pure white, just flashes almost like a flashbulb, and then he starts to fade out, and you see another camera flashbulb go off, and it's, you know, the crime scene unit is in taking pictures and mapping out everything that happened inside of Tony's lab. And once again, Pepper thinks it's Killmonger, and Killmonger's like, Dude, look at, man, like the Dora Milaje spears here. Like, clearly Wakanda was coming back after Tony for taking the vibranium. And, like, you know, General Ross is 100% on. Like, that makes the most sense. That's what we're going with. We're ready to go to war. And you're like, oh my gosh, man. Like, you can literally see the entire plan for Killmonger taking shape in a way that's going to work out really well for him. And the next thing you know, they put all of his robots into production and all that vibranium to use. And the next thing you know, you've got like 6 planes filled with these robots. And, you know, Killmonger brings them into Africa. He meets up with Klaw. Klaw is like, this is amazing. Like, look what you did. Like, good on you, man. Like, I can't wait to get back to work. And Killmonger's like, you want to just kind of take a side? And Klaw drives him out to where the entrance to Wakanda is, like where the shield is. And he's like, right there, man, there it is, Wakanda. And, you know, Killmonger gets out and he's kind of admiring it. And Klaw's like, we should probably bounce, man. And much like he did in Black Panther, he double crosses Klaw, kills him on the spot, ignores, you know, the whole military action that's getting ready to happen the next day, brings Klaw into Wakanda and is like, here's my peace offering for you guys, man. I'm, you know, the nephew to the king. And, like, shows him the tattoo. They bring him in, you know, and does the whole bit that he does from Black Panther. And because this time there was no civil war, so King T'Chaka's still alive because we're before that point in time. There's no Black Panther in his way because he's already disposed of him and, like, killed him. Like, him and Rhodes got, like, flown in caskets. They got the funerals, the whole 9. And that just kind of puts him in a position where King T'Chaka welcomes him with open arms, you know, and he knows what he did to his father. So he's like, yeah, you are one of us. Come in. And, you know, basically Killmonger's just like, look, I just want to help here however I can help. But, like, we do kind of got to get to work because there's no time for celebration. Like, war is on the doorstep. And they start going through different strategies. And he's like, I think the only thing you can do is let them in with these robots and then close the shield. And Shuri is like, why would you do this? And she already is a genius. She's like, doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? And he's like, that's how you'll cut off Stark's, you know, satellite network. Like, you'll disconnect him from Jarvis. It'll shut all the machines down. And I love this moment. T'Chaka looks over to the Queen and is like, what do you think? And she kind of gives the okay, and it's fine. You find out here when he's like, you know, what do you think, General? That the Queen is the general of the Dora Milaje. And she's like, I think we got to do it. And you flip back, you see all of the robots are getting ready. General Ross is in, like, a command center. He's looking through video, and he's like, where's Wakanda? I thought Wakanda was going to be here. And you can start to see, like, the red lights of all of their eyes lighting up in the distance. And Killmonger's, like, kind of gives the nod, and T'Chaka is like, okay, you know, like, open the shield. And you see them all come in, and as soon as they come in, and what's cool, too, is as they're walking in, Ross sees the shield reveal itself, and he sees the city, and he's like, wow, Wakanda. And, like, just the awe that city brings, even in the animated form. And immediately, once they're all in, boom, shuts the shield, and sure enough, all of the drones power down. And, you know, you had all the Wakandan warriors, they were ready to go, and everybody starts celebrating, and, you know, I think the king is saying, you know, something along the lines of, like, you know, a great victory or whatever, and Killmonger's like, well, I got other plans. You see, he's got a little button, and he pushes it, and all of the robots come back on, and they start fighting. And you get this freaking dope-ass battle sequence that he 100% wants to happen because he's going to go in and save the day. That's how he's going to win his favor in Wakanda. And you get this wonderful moment where once they realize it's about to go down, you see the Queen, and she's just like, for T'Challa! And then everybody behind is like, E-Bombay. E-Bombay. I'm like, yeah, man, like, shoot. Like, this is, and that was one of those moments in the episode that kind of hit close to home, because with everything that's happened to Chadwick in real life, and the ideas that are kind of being floated around of what might happen with Black Panther 2, the idea of a funeral and a possible battle to avenge him seems very, very likely. And this is kind of like a sneak peek at what some of Black Panther could theoretically look like. Except for the fact that the Queen is a general, and she is badass, man. As they lead everybody in, they just start going to work. Like, you get everybody up with the shields first, and they move forward, and then she comes flying over the top and just splits one of these bad boys in half, and they start going to town. And as it's all unfolding, you see Killmonger hop down. He ends up on top of a rhinoceros, and he's like, Wakanda forever, leads the rhino in, splits a whole bunch of them. He jumps off, and you just get this really, really well choreographed and animated action sequence of this entire battle, and you're just seeing them take, and like, it seems to a degree like the robots are clearly programmed to make it look like they're fighting for real, and like Killmonger's got to like put in some work, and he does work. And at one point, like, Okoye is about to go down, saves her by throwing a spear through the robot's hand, and like, as a fan of all of these people, you're watching Killmonger save all of them like a hero, but you know that this is part of his plan from the original Black Panther, where it's like, if he becomes Black Panther and then he can usurp T'Chaka and become like the ruler, well, now all of a sudden he's got all the resources at his fingertips to go and do exactly what he wants. But watching him save all these people, you can't help but root for him in the moment, you know. And you know, as they continue to fight, you get like another great moment where you see the Queen throw one through like two robots that are standing back to back, and then she jumps up, grabs it, and rips it through, and like, you're getting like sparks and explosions, and the light is gorgeous. And once again she yells for T'Challa, and you hear everybody screaming and hollering. You know, you see Killmonger run in to go kind of take out the rest of the group, but you can tell Wakanda's won the battle. And from there, you know, you move to Uato sitting you know, in now a sunsetted cloud and like sky, and he is more negative space, and the sunset kind of coming through in his features. Really, really dope spot. But it's something that, you know, Killmonger had mentioned to, you know, King T'Chaka when they first got there, saying how his dad had always spoken highly of Wakanda, and watching the sun rise on, you know, the mountains with, you know, his uncle. And T'Chaka's like, I told my son the same story, and that's where you're at. You're out on the mountain, you're seeing the sun come up, and, you know, T'Chaka's like, isn't it beautiful? He's like, words don't properly describe it. And he's like, you know, I'm a servant for Wakanda. Just let me serve, sir. And he's like, well, with this herb, and you see him giving him the Black Panther herb, and as he gives it to him, he wakes up in that mystical realm where we've seen all the ancestors. And instead of it being inside of his dad's apartment in Oakland, he's in front of the tree with all the Panthers. And the Panther that comes down and speaks to him, of course, is T'Challa. And this was another moment that really kind of hit close to home, where you kind of have T'Challa just coming down going, was it worth it, cousin? Was it worth everything that happened? Like, me being dead and you getting what you want? And, you know, Killmonger, again, is just in that rhetoric of, like, I will do whatever it takes to accomplish what I needed to accomplish. And, you know, you get this wonderful line, and again, Bradley's writing is just so good. But it's one of those things that just, it's so fitting, especially with, like, losing Chadwick the way that we lost him in real life, and not having an actual end for T'Challa in the movies that he could perform, right? Like, whatever they're going to do, it's not going to physically be able to be him. This show is kind of giving Chadwick the opportunities to do all the things, like going to the mystical realm with all the ancestors, and dying, and having a funeral, and getting to say these words to Killmonger. Like, it just hit in a way where it's like, you're kind of getting the goodbye from Chadwick without it being in the Black Panther movie, but still a way for him to kind of exit in a fashion where it's like, it hits, and it lines up with everything that you would want Chad, you know, to be, and everything that he represents as Black Panther. But he's like, your cure for human suffering is just more suffering. And he's like, that doesn't make any sense. And Killmonger's like, no, it's more power. You know, the cure is power, and now I have the power. And you hear, you know, T'Challa go, because you stole it. Like, you gotta be careful, because, like, power that is not earned can be extremely volatile. And, like, again, like I said, it's just one of those lines that just hits from T'Challa, and then he's like, and look, at one point or another, that's going to catch up to you, and it'll get you on this plane or our plane. Like, whatever it is eventually, you're going to have to atone for whatever your sins are. And as he's talking about him stealing power, they fade out from the mystical realm, and they fade into, you know, you got Killmonger looking out over Wakanda in the Black Panther suit with the gold necklace, and you're just like, oh my gosh, where does this go now? And we jump from there back to home base, and you got General Ross going off about wanting to go to war with Wakanda, and Pepper just not buying it, and she storms off into her office, and who's sitting in the chair but Shuri, and she's like, how did you get in here? And she's like, don't worry, I got my ways. And she's like, we have a common enemy. and hands her material that proves that Killmonger killed Rhodes, Black Panther, and Tony. And she's like, where did you get this? She's like, Mr. Stark was a genius, but he's not the only genius. And she doesn't reveal how, but clearly, must have worked things where it's like, much like when we started to learn some of the stuff that Wakanda was doing for a brief period of time, it was like, oh man, like, they've got this nanotechnology, then Tony had this nanotechnology, so kind of reaffirming and re-bringing up that, like, kind of this battle of, like, Tony is a genius, but, like, there is other geniuses in Wakanda, and one that's specifically super, super young, that can go toe-to-toe with Tony. And she's like, I think we should get to work going after someone that we both, are against. And you hear Uato come in and say, heroes are never truly gone. They live on forever, as do the ones they inspire to carry on the fight. And that's where it kind of, again, wraps up and hits, again, like a beat for Black Panther, where it's like, Chad will never truly be gone, man. Like, he'll live on forever and all of this stuff. And certainly what he means to the people that he has inspired, and to what it'll mean to any of the stories that come from the MCU from Wakanda. Like, just these really wonderful moments where I wonder if A.C. Bradley went in and tweaked the end of the episode a little bit to get some of these lines in. So, you can't alter what Chadwick laid down, but you could have Uato say something like that then hits home and kind of does give you this, like, feeling of, like, kind of dealing directly with T'Challa dying and having Chad be the voice to get through that. And just having him be the epitome of what, T'Challa is for Killmonger in that final moment. And then the episode ends and you're just like, yo, man, A.C. Bradley, you do such a good job. I love your writing. I love what you're doing with this series. But you gotta stop leaving me with these major cliffhangers where it's like, yo, we were like moving towards, like, Killmonger trying to take over the world, seemingly, like, as Black Panther. I am so fascinated at that idea of, like, him being in power in Wakanda and Shuri working with Pepper probably donning the Iron Man suit at some point in that type of story, like, seeing her and Shuri work together. How fun would that be? And now we just gotta sit and go, I hope we get that in season 2. Like, it's wonderful because it gives you hope that, like, you can continue to have these stories and keep individual parts of this anthology series alive, in continuity, and maybe something you could get in season 2. But at the same time, you're like, man, I just want to see the end of that story. Like, how does that resolve? We can't have Killmonger, like, winning things, man, like, because he's not good. And it is one of those things, like, because he doesn't go through his story, he never gets to have that redemption moment where, like, you could think, like, hey, if you brought that guy back, he would be a good Black Panther because of what he learned in that movie. That guy doesn't exist. And to see both him and Tony play out the way that they play out, I just thought it was brilliant stuff from A.C. Bradley and a really, really phenomenal episode once again for What If. But that's it, man. I love this. Man, I love this show. I feel like people are kind of sleeping on this show because it's animated, and, like, the storytelling is so good. The fact that it's so reminiscent of what If did in the comics anytime it would pop up. Like, you just get these one-off stories where you want to go back to those worlds and be like, man, that seems so interesting. Can't we go back there? Like, to just see them do it the way that they're doing it, like, you shouldn't be sleeping on the show. And like I said, we are starting to work toward a place where these universes are going to start crisscrossing, and I think we're going to get MCU tie-ins pretty soon because we're running out of episodes. I think we've only got 3, maybe 4 left. But so far, the show is kicking butt, and certainly on the second watch, the Killmonger episode hit big time. But that's it for me, man. I don't want to say anything else. I don't got anything else to talk about. We've hit all my spoilers from today's episode. So now I want to know what you're thinking. What were your thoughts on What If Episode 6? Did you see Killmonger ending up being the villain of the story again? Again, like I said, I thought my original thought was, oh man, if he still saves Tony, like, we're going to get to see Killmonger a hero. Maybe a Killmonger you could bring into the MCU. And then we got the Killmonger that was in the MCU, just with a plan that's executed correctly. Like, did that catch you off guard? Did you see that coming? How did that play for you? What moments in the episode popped? What'd you think of the blending of, like, Iron Man 2, Age of Ultron, and Black Panther, like, storylines being weaved in? Animation, writing, acting, performances, anything you got, man. Good, bad, indifferent on What If Episode 6, What If Killmonger Saved Tony Stark, goes down below in the comments section. This is a spoiler review, so go spoiler heavy. Let me know everything you're thinking. I look forward to talking to all you guys down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man as we approach next week and the end of What If on Wednesdays, or maybe you like American Horror Story, got that going on right now. You just like anytime I'm talking movies, TV, trailer reactions, you just dig my energy and vibe, you want to show a little love support, well, hey, come join C-Maniac Nation. Real easy to do. All you got to do is jump over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema, sit down. I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Oh, hey, what's going on? You must be sticking around because you're looking for more content featuring this guy. Well, guess what? You're in the right place. You can check out more videos right here and right here. And if you have and you want to come join that C-Maniac Nation, you can hit that subscribe right over there.